Hello everyone, my name is George Fiore and I'm the Executive Director of the Chester County Intermediate Unit. On behalf of the Chester County Intermediate Unit, I'd like to welcome you and thank you for participating in our Kids Voting event. The Kids Voting USA program focuses on developing critical thinking and teaching children to gather and analyze information to make informed decisions, all skills that will serve students well in future elections and beyond. Whether you are in elementary school, middle school, or high school, of voting age or not, it's important for you to educate yourself on voting at the local, state, and federal level. Today you will hear from Chester County Commissioners Marian Moskowitz, Josh Maxwell, and Michelle Kichline. The commissioners will explain how we elect the people who serve the public, the importance of local elections, and the voting process. You will also learn about historic voting barriers and how and when some of these have been addressed through amendments to our Constitution. And if you have recently registered to vote, you will learn the important details necessary to be an effective first-time voter in Pennsylvania. But first, let's open with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, students. When this country was founded, only male landowners were allowed to vote. In this next segment, you will hear the story of the Justice Bell, a Chester County story that was buried for almost a century, but has come to light through the Justice Bell Foundation. The work of the women who led the Justice Bell tour helped women in this country, close to 50% of the population, earn the right to vote.
My name is Linda Hall, and I'm a member of the Chester County chapter of the National Society of the Daughters of the American Revolution, also known as the DAR. All of us who are members had ancestors who served in the American Revolution. In commemoration of the 100th anniversary of the passage of the 19th Amendment to the Constitution, giving women the right to vote, the DAR had a national contest. We were invited to submit a work of fiction or nonfiction to support the theme for the American Heritage Contest, Rise and Shine Your Light on the 19th Amendment. Remembering stories told to me by my late husband, Roger Hall, and his cousin, Gabrielle Hall, I was inspired to write an essay about their aunt, Louise Hall. She was a famous women's suffragette who rode on a flatbed truck with a replica of the Liberty Bell and gave open-air speeches throughout the state of Pennsylvania in 1915 in what was called the Votes for Women Liberty Bell Tour. I hope that others will share my admiration for these brave women and uphold their legacy to ensure that women's voices will continue to be heard and respected in our nation. This is dedicated to the memory of my beloved husband, Roger Wolcott Hall, and his remarkable aunt, Louise Hall. Louise Hall and the Liberty Bell Tour. And so they come and go, some wondering, a few deriding, the great mass helping and encouraging. We who stand holding these banners every day know that once seen, men and women do not forget our purple, white, and gold flags. They have come to symbolize our insistent demand for justice. The Suffragist magazine, May 12, 1917.
Born in 1882 in Pensacola, Florida, where her father, a naval officer, was stationed, Louise Hall graduated from Vassar College in 1903. She was a champion for women's rights and a beacon of the suffragist movement. Louise marched into this role in the footsteps of her grandmother, Abigail Wolcott Ellsworth Hall, the daughter of Oliver Ellsworth, a famous Revolutionary War patriot, jurist, statesman, and one of the framers of the United States Constitution.
Catherine Wentworth Ruschenberger of Chester County, Pennsylvania, commissioned a replica of the Liberty Bell, aka the Justice Bell, and organized the Liberty Bell Tour Votes for Women march in 1915. She believed that women's claim to suffrage was based on justice and had the phrase "establish justice" added to the bell's motto. The clapper was changed to symbolize women's muted political voice.
Louise Hall and her life partner Ethel Hart, daughter of Bret Hart, the poet and novelist, led the 5,000-mile Liberty Bell Tour in a flatbed truck built especially for the tour. They crisscrossed Pennsylvania, becoming something of a sensation, taking the bell to every county in the state and participating in local suffrage parades and rallies. Ruschenberger accompanied the bell on the tour.
The derision of women's rights in the popular press meant that the organizers were smart to hire Hall's brother, Oliver, an engineer, graduate of MIT, and avid photographer, to document the rallies.
Oliver's pictures capture the dynamic spirit of these amazing women, in addition to curious onlookers, children waving flags, band-led parades, and local luminaries in small towns throughout Pennsylvania. Throughout their suffragist tour, Hall, Hart, and Ruschenberger spoke to scores of interested listeners. The bell eventually appeared at suffrage events in Chicago and Washington, D.C. Miniature versions of the bell were sold to defray the cost of its tour.
The bell's last stop before Election Day was in Westchester, Chester County. The appropriateness of the locale was notable, as it hosted the first Pennsylvania Women's Rights Convention in 1852. Ultimately, the referendum failed statewide. Chester County was the only southeastern county to support it. The bell's clapper was chained into silence until the passage of the 19th Amendment. In a ceremony held in Independence Square in September 1920, the bell was raised and rung by a woman dressed as Justice, signaling true liberty in the United States. Votes for Women. The Justice Bell now resides in the Washington Memorial Chapel at Valley Forge.
Louise Hall became acquainted with Susan Walker Fitzgerald, a graduate of Bryn Mawr College and a leader in the Massachusetts Women's Suffrage Association. Bryn Mawr, in the outskirts of suburban Philadelphia, was known as the most pro-suffrage of the women's colleges. The National College Equal Suffrage League at Bryn Mawr had 1/4 of the students and several of the faculty, the Lantern reported in 1908.
By the spring before the outbreak of World War I in 1914, 220 undergraduates, graduates, and members of the faculty were members. In addition to sponsoring lectures, the chapter held pro-suffrage activities and meetings on campus, established a pro- and anti-suffrage literature collection in the library, and participated in marches and other events in Philadelphia and throughout the East Coast.
Louise Hall's passionate activism contributed to the successful passage by Congress of the 19th Amendment on June 4th, 1919, and ratified on August 18th, 1920, ensuring voting rights for women across the United States. Louise remained dedicated to rights for women throughout her life, becoming the first woman insurance agent in the state of Massachusetts and supervisor of the Women's Department at the Massachusetts Mutual Life Insurance Company in Springfield, Massachusetts.
Next, we will hear from our Chester County Commissioners about how we elect the people who serve the public, the importance of local elections, and the voting process.
Hello, I'm Marian Moskowitz, and I have the honor of serving as a Chester County Commissioner and Chair of the Board of Commissioners. Along with 2 other commissioners, I was elected to run the Chester County government, a government that looks after services like the 911 center that people call when they have an emergency, the libraries in Chester County, the health department that has been very busy this year, helping to look after everyone's health during COVID-19, the county courts where trials take place, and very important, the elections that take place 2 times a year, and that will be happening in less than a month. Our Voter Services Department runs every election in Chester County, making sure that every person who is running for an office has their name on the ballot, that every voter has a polling place where they can go to vote, and this year, everyone who wants to vote by a mail receives a ballot. And importantly, Voter Services counts every ballot completed by all the voters in Chester County. Sometimes the counts in elections are very close. In local elections, especially, the difference can be as small as just a few votes. So it is true that every vote counts. Voting is how we choose the people who work for us and who work for the issues that we believe are important. I encourage all of you to read about and learn about the ideas and issues that are important to you long before you are 18 and able to vote, so that as soon as you are able, your voice can be heard through your vote.
My name is Josh Maxwell, and I was privileged to be elected as a Chester County Commissioner just last year. Elections for local governments are very important, sometimes as important as the election for President of the United States, because the people who you vote for to lead in your state government, in your county government, in your local township or borough, and your local school board can impact you the most. The people elected in these government entities decide about education laws like how many days you go to school, what you need to do in order to get a driver's license, how much of your community should be kept as parks and trails, and even, in the case of your local school boards, where you go to school and how much homework you should have. So knowing about the people who want to be elected as the leaders of these governments is very important. Another very important part of the election process is appreciating the fact that when you, all of you, are 18, you have the right and opportunity to vote. It wasn't always that way. In the early years of the United States, only white men who owned land could vote. It was only after many struggles, many demonstrations, many appeals over many years that African Americans, women, Native Americans, and even those with disabilities were given the right or the accessibility to vote. Voting in elections is one of our key freedoms. And even though you are not yet old enough to vote, there are still many things you can do to get involved. Read about and decide what issues are important to you. Talk to people about what you believe to be important. Voice your opinion in your school newspaper and your local newspaper, on social media, and through community rallies. Volunteer. You can help to get candidates who you believe in to be elected, even if you aren't yet able to vote. And who knows, one day you might even decide to run for elected office yourself, and I hope you do.
Hello, I am Michelle Kichline, and I too have the honor of serving as one of your Chester County Commissioners. When I was young, I never thought about running for an elected office. I didn't even know what you had to do to be able to vote. It's not a complicated process, but it's a very important one. It starts with turning 18 and registering to vote. In Pennsylvania, you can register to vote online, by mail, or in person. And once you've registered to vote, you can vote in every election, every year, and that is exactly what you should do. This year, for the first time in Pennsylvania, there are 2 ways that you can vote: by going to a polling place on Election Day, or you can vote by mail-in or absentee ballot. If you decide to go to your polling place, you sign the poll book that confirms you are registered to vote. You receive a ballot, and then you go to a privacy booth to fill it out. When you're finished filling in the ballot, you take it to the machine that scans the ballot and confirms that your vote has counted. Simple as that, but oh so important. If you decide to vote by mail-in ballot, you first have to ask for a ballot. Once your request for a mail-in ballot is received by Voter Services, you will be sent your ballot in the mail. You fill it in, place it in 2 different envelopes to keep it safe, and sign the back of the envelope to confirm it's your vote. Then you send it to Chester County's election office. Again, simple as that, but very important. The first time I voted, I felt proud that I helped contribute to the election and that I took up the right to vote that many in history had fought for. America is a democracy. Voting is how a democracy works. I certainly hope that as soon as you can, you will take up the right to vote.
Thank you to our Chester County Commissioners for participating in today's event and for your leadership in Chester County. Next, take a little sneak peek at this behind-the-scenes segment at Voter Services. At this time, we will hear from some of our state and federal legislators about the various amendments to the United States Constitution and other acts passed that help to remove voting barriers.
In today's United States, most American citizens over the age of 18 are allowed to register to vote and cast their ballot in local, state, and federal elections. But it wasn't always that way. When the Founding Fathers wrote the U.S. Constitution, they gave the states the power to decide who could vote. Generally, the states required voters to be property owners or tax-paying citizens. This limited the voters to about 6% of the population, mostly white males. It wasn't until the 15th Amendment, ratified in 1870, that the Constitution sought to create national standards regarding voting. Other amendments followed, each removing barriers and allowing another segment of the population to vote. In order of their ratification are the amendments to the United States Constitution that granted a larger and larger portion of the American citizens the right to vote. Amendment 15, ratified February 3, 1870. The right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude, thus granting African American men the right to vote.
Amendment 19, ratified August 18, 1920. The right of citizens of the United States to vote should not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex, thus granting American women the right to vote.
I'm State Senator Andy Dinniman. Hello. It's my task to read one of the amendments dealing with suffrage, in this case, the 23rd Amendment, which gave the vote to the citizens of the District of Columbia, Washington, D.C. But before I read it, you need to understand the 12th Amendment, because it expanded the 12th Amendment. Under the 12th Amendment, the President and Vice President of the United States are elected by people called electors. Each state has so many electors based on its population. We do not elect the President and Vice President by popular vote. What the 23rd Amendment does is it takes that process and applies it to the District of Columbia, which, as you know, is not a state. It was ratified in 1961, and let me read it to you. It gave the citizens of the District of Columbia the right to choose electors based on the popular vote taking place within the district, so they too can participate in the election of the president and vice president, and thus we see the expansion of suffrage. Let me read this. The district constituting the seat of government of the United States shall appoint in such manner as the Congress may direct a number of electors of president and vice president equal to the whole number of senators and representatives in Congress to which the district would be entitled if it was a state, but in no event more than the least populous state. They shall be in addition to those appointed by the state, but they shall be considered for the purposes of the election of president and vice president to be electors appointed by a state, and they shall meet in the district and perform such duties as provided by the 12th Amendment to the Constitution. That sounds very complicated, but just remember the 12th. Remember, we elect the presidents through electors, not simply the popular vote. And this expanded the suffrage by giving the vote for president and vice president to the citizens of our nation's capital, Washington, D.C. Thank you.
Amendment 24, ratified January 23, 1964. The right of citizens of the United States to vote in any primary or other election for president or vice president, for electors for president or vice president, or for senator or representative in Congress, shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or any state reason of failure to pay any poll tax or other tax, thus outlawing the poll tax as a voting requirement.
Amendment 26, ratified July 1st, 1971. The right of the right of citizens of the United States who are 18 years of age or older to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of age, thus lowering the voting age from 21 to 18.
I'm State Representative Carolyn Comita of the 156th District of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. An act to enforce the 15th Amendment of the Constitution of the United States and for other purposes. Be it enacted by the Senate and the House of Representatives of the United States of America in Congress assembled, that this act shall be known as the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Section 2. No voting qualification or prerequisite to voting or standard, practice, or procedure shall be imposed or applied by any state or political subdivision to deny or abridge the right of any citizen of the United States to vote on account of race or color.
The Uniformed and Overseas Citizen Absentee Voting Act, or the UOCAVA, signed into law on August 28, 1986. The UOCAVA begins with to consolidate and improve provisions of law relating to absentee registration and voting in elections for federal office by members of the uniformed services and persons who reside overseas, and continues in part, each state shall permit absent uniformed service voters and overseas voters to use absentee registration procedures and to vote by absentee ballot in general, special, and primary and runoff elections for federal office, thus guaranteeing the right to vote in federal elections for members of the 7 uniformed services and certain other U.S. citizens residing overseas.
Our country has made great progress towards a more equitable access to the ballot, but there's still work to be done. People all over our Commonwealth and across the country still face barriers preventing them from exercising their constitutional right to vote. This voter suppression takes various forms: long lines at polling places in underserved communities, inconsistent voter ID laws, complicated voter registration processes, and much more. In an effort to combat such suppression, I offered my own voting amendment to H.R. 1, the For the People Act of 2019. My legislation would require that all states offer 10 hours per day of early voting for 15 days prior to the election day. Early voting allows people more flexibility on their timetables, particularly for those people who work schedules that prohibit them from making it to the ballot on the election day. Without universal access to the ballot for all eligible voters, we are failing our democracy. As someone who served in the military and now in Congress, I know what it takes to defend this most fundamental right. Americans deserve to have their voices heard at the ballot box.
Now that you know about some of the hard-fought battles won for many to earn the right to vote, let's hear what you need to know if you are voting for the very first time in this election.
Hi everyone, my name is Paige. I'm a high school senior. I just wanted to give a short video about the importance of voting, especially if you're a first-time voter. This is a consequential election and Gen Z is going to start to have this right to vote. So if you are 18 and eligible to vote, please go to iwillvote.com. And voting has begun with mail-in ballots and some early in-person options. Make sure you check local and state guidelines for those specifics.
If you're voting in Pennsylvania for the first time, or if you are voting at a new polling place, learn how to get ready to go to the polling place on election day. What should you do to prepare? First, you will want to review the candidates and measures that are on the ballot and plan who you will vote for in advance. You can find a sample ballot on your county election office website. When you vote for the first time, you must bring a photo or non-photo ID, for example, a Pennsylvania driver's license or student ID. Next, you will want to find out your polling place location by using the online form at www.pavoterservices.pa.gov.
All you have to know is the county you live in and your address. Finally, learn about the voting system in your county and see a demo of how it works. Most voters in Chester County will vote using a hand-marked paper ballot, but others will use a specific kind of voting machine.
What should you know about your polling place? In Pennsylvania, polls are open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. The busiest times of day to vote are in the morning and evening. If you can, try going at a less busy time, like right after school. If you have a question, ask a poll worker. They are there to ensure the voting process goes smoothly for everyone. If you are in line before or at the time the polls close, you will be allowed to cast your vote. Your best bet, however, is to plan to arrive before 7:30 p.m.
What do I do if there's a problem? If you need help voting, cannot use the voting system, or cannot go to a polling place because of a disability, learn about accessible voting options. Sometimes you can have a person accompany you to help you, or you can vote by an alternative ballot, by mail or absentee ballot. If you are away from home on election day, you may also be able to vote by absentee ballot. If your name is not in the voter roster and you believe you registered to vote in your precinct, you may have the right to vote on a provisional ballot. Your vote will count if election officials determine that you are eligible to vote.
All of this information and more can be found at www.votespa.com. In addition, if you live in Chester County, check out www.chesco.org and search for voter services. If you happen to live in Delaware County but attend a Chester County school, you'll want to go to www.delcopa.gov and search for voter resources for more information. Trust us, voting is easier than getting your driver's license, so if you're registered, be sure to cast your ballot.
And even if you are under the age of 18 like myself, there's still plenty of ways you can get involved. I will be a poll worker on November 3rd, helping people who want to cast their vote, making sure that they have the opportunity to do so. So there are plenty of ways you can get involved. You could also phone bank for a particular candidate or a specific issue, and you could have conversations with family and friends about what their voting plan is. Is that by mail, in person, etc.? So keep being active and civically engaged. Gen Z has a new presence in this election, and I hope that we will be the most civically engaged generation thus far. Happy voting!
Thank you to our Chester County students. Well done. You give us all great hope for the future of our country. Before we head out today, I want to ask you to join me in listening to this instrumental rendition of our national anthem. Thank you. That was very moving. On behalf of the CCIU and Chester County, we appreciate everyone who tuned in to celebrate the rich history and future of our nation. We hope that these celebrations will not only create the educated voters of tomorrow, but will also serve as an example to inspire parents, friends, and family members to become engaged, informed, and active citizens. Thank you, and no matter how you decide to vote this year, by mail, drop box, or at the polls, I hope you make your voice heard on November 3rd.